Hi, this is Tracy Shultz. I'm up today with a video for the Fairy Stamper Design Team. I'm using Bluebell and the Lantern Tree stamps, and then later on I'll be using a couple other stamps as well. I'm going to show you my prototype. This is what I created using Brushos and my gel plate, and I created it just on some regular copy paper. So it gives me an idea of positioning and how I want to do my basic layout for my card. I'm going to get my gel plate here out of the clamshell. If you're not familiar with a gel plate, it's basically like a gelatin, but it's an art supply. I put mine on top of white paper so that I can see through it and have some backing. These Brushos are basically powdered watercolors, and I have basic set, and I'm going to be using the blue, pink, and purple on this first press that I do. Basically, I'm going to be spritzing this with water and then taking some watercolor paper and getting an impression. And the full moon stamp set from Fairy Hugs, which you can get at Fairy Stampers, I thought I would put that on the gel plate, but actually you should probably put a piece of acetate down if there's a section that you don't want covered with the Brushos. But look how whenever you go ahead and put water, how they bloom. So anyways, the whole thing with the little moon didn't work out, but I left it in because I wanted you to see how pretty this turned out with the Brushos. And I did use a brayer just to get that water moving around a little bit, but you don't have to. And then once you press down, you want to make sure you get a good impression, give it a chance to let that absorb, and then I had that real pretty violet, blue, pink background. And then I can go in again with another piece of paper and get another impression. So I lost a little bit of my video footage, but here I have some with the green and the yellow, so that made a really nice background. I'm just using these little pieces of watercolor paper to soak up the color, and then I can use those to die cut sentiments with later. I just sprinkled some Brushos onto the gel plate. It's hard to see what color I'm using right now, but when we go ahead and put water on it, we'll see that it's blue. I also have some Cosmic Shimmer powders. They're basically the same as Brushos, but they have mica in them, so they come up like pearlescent shiny. So that's always fun. This is a beautiful blue color. Would be great for a water theme, sort of ocean themed background, but this is actually the one I end up using, I believe, the one that I just pulled. I like it. It kind of looks real earthy, and it's got greens and blues in it. It's got turquoise and sort of mint color. So I just did this Brusho gel plate process for till I ran out of the papers that I cut, and I pulled lots of backgrounds, nice and round, which I like about this round jelly plate, because when you are trying to get that spherical scene, it's sometimes challenging. Now, you can die cut this. I have a nice big die that does die cut this size, but for my card today, I actually just ended up stamping right around the round sphere. I didn't cut it out, in other words. So that gives you an idea of how the Brushos work, and I think you agree that it has some really cool effects, and it's definitely fun to make backgrounds with. I'm going to stamp Bluebell using VersaFine Clara Nocturne ink, and this paper is not watercolor paper, it's Hammermill premium copy paper. It's very smooth and takes the ink wonderfully, and it's 100 pound. Once I'm done stamping this, I'm going to cut it out in my scan and cut. I also am going to stamp the large rock in the rocks stamp set from Fairy Hugs, and I'm going to cut that out in my scan and cut too as well. So that'll give some dimension to the panel instead of just making it a one layer panel. I'm going to be using some glitter glue from Ranger Stickles. This is clear with shiny gold stars. I'm just going to use a plastic palette knife and spread that around there on the blue watercolor background. So that's the actual watercolor background that I created earlier using the gel plate. So it's not the green one that I thought I was going to use. It actually ended up using blue. I'm going to color the large rock. I mean, to me it looks like a boulder. I'm going to be coloring it with various different colors of Ohuhu alcohol markers, and these are just different gray colors. And the only thing that I do is where the stamp has lines that are like the impression of the lines, I color those with the dark gray first. Anywhere that there's shadows, I color those in with the dark gray, and then I just fill it in with light gray. And that's really all I do to color that large rock. But it's a great rock for Bluebell to be on top of, where she is pretty much like in a praying position or sort of like on the ground crying. So she needed to have something that she could be like grounded on besides just the bottom of the circle. So I really like this rock. I'm so glad I got it. I think it's going to be really useful in a lot of my projects for the Fairy Stamper design team. It also comes with two small rocks, and I'm just coloring those in right now, although I do not use them in this card. We're going to put the final touches on this panel. We've got our beautiful blue Brusho background, which has those, you can see just those stars twinkling every time I move the paper. That Stickles glue that has glitter in it is so cool. I love using it, and I think it really makes the background pop on this. So I've got the lantern tree, which is from Fairy Hugs, available at the Fairy Stamper website. And I'm going to be making sort of a canopy above the fairy. So I'm just using my stamp block that has like little foam feet on it, which helps me to position the stamp at a different angle than it normally would be positioned at. It's a tree. I'm not using it as a tree though. I'm basically using it as, like I said, maybe a tree, but more an arch above the fairy. And I'm using VersaFine Clara Nocturne ink, and it works wonderfully. There's a little spot at the top that I keep trying to fill in with a little bit of that tree, but I still keep missing it. So I just say, forget it. I'm not going to do it anymore because I was afraid if I kept stamping it, it would get too dark. All right, so here we have two sets of vines. One's called the hanging vines and the other's called flower vines. I'm going to use flower vines. It's a larger set of vines. I'm going to use that to stamp around. And looking back, I don't know that I would do this step. I think it gets a little bit too crowded, but I wasn't sure. And so I did it. It does fill in the white space, but I think sometimes we have to be okay with white space. Don't be so worried about it. It's not always something that has to be completely stamped over. And then I grabbed some Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink, and I figured I should probably ink blend that white space because I thought that it would look better if it was ink blended. And again, looking back, I probably wouldn't have done this step. I would have just left that white space the way it was. Sometimes our eye needs a little bit of white space. But I mean, I still like the way the card turned out, and I like the way the stamps look together and work together. I'm just going to speed this up a little bit because I'm a very slow crafter, and you probably don't really need to see me ink blending these corners anyways because I'm just using a domed blender and some Distress Oxide ink and Speckled Egg, which I think matches nicely with the colors, but it sort of is a more dull color blue, so it's not competing with that bright, vibrant blue Brusho background. I just keep doing that because I want you to see how beautiful that background turned out, because not only do I have the gl glitter gel glue from Stickles, I also put some of the Cosmic Shimmer on top of my Brusho, so it's got that mica shine to it. This is a sentiment from my stash. It says pray. I used some black cardstock that had stars on it and silver foil for the letters. And I'm just going to pop this up with some little square foam pop dots, but they're square. And that's going to give it a little bit of dimension and lift so it doesn't get too lost in the branches of the tree. If you're interested in checking out the fairy stamper line of products, I'm going to have that linked below in my description box, as well as the Fairy Hugs Facebook group, where you can find lots of inspiration from all the different design team members. I'm using Spectrum Noir aqua brush pens that have glitter in them to color in her wings, and I really like the way this turned out. It's almost a stained glass effect, and the colors that I'm using are like a light green, a light purple, light blue, and a darker purple. I finished my card by coloring her hair with some gold sparkle pen as well as the lanterns, and I popped this up with foam tape. Here are some still photos of my card. Thanks so much for checking out the Fairy Stamper Design Team YouTube channel. Have a great day. Bye-bye.